right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Making Monsters. I'm Taylor Dahl, and we're joined today by Matt Hayes. He covers college football for USA Today. Matt, I appreciate you hopping on. I know we just had some big news break with Nico Yamalieva, or however we want to say it today. But
Yamalieva.
however you want to say
we'll go
it.
with that one now.
Yeah, but the Tennessee parting ways with him, little crazy. College football world there's a lot of stuff that's going on, and that's kind of interesting. We'll see where he ends up landing, but we're talking about some running backs, and Ashton Jeanty. You did a story on this last season, and I mentioned to you, I was like, oh, I saw Ashton Jeanty was born in Jacksonville, Florida, and you were like, what? Like, that's interesting. Let me do a story on him. So you went out to Boise, did a story on Ashton Jeanty. So that's why I want to chat a little bit today, the actual football, but also a little bit what you learned from that when you wrote that story on him. So let's start there. The Ashton Jeanty story, what took him from Jacksonville to Boise, his kind of journey, and what led him to like the football world in general.
Well, the Jacksonville angle is he's an Army brat. His mom and dad. So that's where they started. He ended up living in multiple cities. Then went overseas for a few years. Was playing like 8-man football overseas with all the bases overseas in Europe have football teams.
Yeah.
And so he's playing football for there. Comes back to Texas. No one really knows him because he hasn't grown through the stages at Texas football.
Yeah.
Has a huge high school career at Texas, but again, he's not really known. So he's kind of overlooked. And he goes to Boise because Boise committed to him and Boise wanted him and he felt like he was wanted. And he went out there, and I'll never forget what Spencer Danielson, the coach at Boise State, told me. He said, this guy walks on our field. He said, I'm telling you, Matt, first day, he's running around. And I was like, who is number 2? Because Spencer Danielson was the defensive coordinator then. He wasn't the head coach.
Yeah.
So he's like, who is this number 2 guy? He said he was a true freshman, and it was men against boys then.
Ooh.
So, and it's just, obviously the legend has grown since. He's a rare cat. He's a different guy that I think if, the buzzword now in the NFL is about you want high character guys. This is a high character guy. This is a guy who could have taken millions from Tennessee, Texas A&M, and gone to the SEC and played at a high level his last season in college football. But he told me he wanted to leave a legacy at Boise State. It was more important to leave a legacy there. And he did. He chased Barry Sanders' single-season NCAA rushing record mark and almost broke it. And even Barry Sanders by the end of the season was pulling for him. He's just a great kid, a guy he's a guy that I think will be a great factor in the locker room, a guy that everyone will rally around.
Yeah, I think a couple things off that. Number one, that's a big Ryan Poles thing. Ryan Poles has been a very big character guy. There's a reason he didn't draft Jalen Carter. He doesn't like any of those possible red flags. He likes the guys that he feels like will immediate make good impact, not just on the field, but off the field too. And so I've heard things like that with Ashton Jeanty. And it is interesting because you don't see the college football loyalty much anymore like we used to. And for him to have a chance to have gone to one of those bigger schools and be able to do it, also just a little bit of a testament to like he wanted to leave that legacy, but he also had that loyalty to Boise State for giving him that opportunity when maybe some schools didn't in the beginning, which you just don't see anymore, Matt, or barely, I guess.
Yeah, right. And especially now as we get further into the whole NIL situation and these guys realizing they have leverage, which we were talking about Nico earlier. It's the thing. He knew he had leverage, so he was trying to get more money. And this is a guy who is not like that. He's again, I keep saying this, he's a unique guy. And it's off the field, on the field. Taylor, you look at the way he plays on the field, and you and I have talked about this at length over the last 5-6 months. The NFL's turning more back toward the running back. Yeah. And Saquon's had played a big role in that. This is a guy who is similar to Saquon and what he can do. This is the most amazing stat of all, and I was talking to a scout about this too about 2 weeks ago because I'm working on an NFL draft story about Ash for USA Today. His yards after first contact, were more rushing yards than any other player in college football last year. And the scout was like, it's not about the level of competition because that doesn't matter. Yeah. That shows you balance. That shows you vision. It shows strength. It shows speed. It shows explosion. He said, because when you get to the NFL, it's still the same thing. It's still using those talents.
Yeah.
Yes, you have a different offensive line in front of you. You're running against different defenders. There's no difference in what you're doing. That's the most remarkable thing is his yards after first contact.
And it's funny too because he was pretty much all of Boise State's offense too. So people knew that Ashton Jeanty was going to be running the ball, and they still couldn't stop him. So to me, when you're talking about okay, the competition level, whatever, he was playing against teams that knew that he was going to get when Ashton Jeanty was on the field, he was going to be getting the ball.
Right. I mean, no doubt about it. And I know I keep hearing people point to the Fiesta Bowl with Penn State, and he had 106 yards, I think, on 30 carries, and people saying, "Oh, that's what it's going to be like." No.
Yeah. He also was running people over still at the line of scrimmage in that game.
It's also you're talking about a top 5 defense in college football against a group of 5 offensive line.
Yeah.
No offense to the guys at Boise State. I mean, that's a tough group of guys, but only one of those guys is going to play in the NFL. Their left tackle.
Yeah.
So they were overmatched, and Penn State was putting 8 and 9 guys in the box because Boise State couldn't throw the ball. Yeah. They couldn't complete passes, and that's why they ganged up on them. So, yeah, I wouldn't look at that Fiesta Bowl game and say, oh, well, that's an indicator of what it's going to be like in the NFL. That's just a ridiculous comparison is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, and if you saw what Penn State did to Notre Dame's offensive line too. Granted, Notre Dame's offensive line had a lot of backups in at that point, but that's what that Penn State defensive line is, and they were terrible.
We saw what they did to Ohio State too, and Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. We saw that game too. So yeah.
Matt, we've had the conversation a lot, and to your point, the last 5-6 months we've talked a lot about Ashton Jeanty, but the last couple months you'll randomly text me, or when you walk in the office you'll be like, are you ready for Ashton Jeanty in Chicago? And then I sent you the meme of the blue field in Chicago yesterday, right. Kind of how like Boise State has it. I was like, man, this kind of looks good. And I know a lot of people hesitate, but to me, and I think you share a similar sentiment, there's not many people in this draft that you feel are like, if they're there, you can't miss. And I feel like if Ashton Jeanty's there at 10, you can't pass that.
Not only that, here's another thing too, Taylor, is because it's become such a vertical game, not only the NFL, but college football too. It seems like now the only thing we're looking for, we being coaches and fans and is game breakers on the outside. Yeah. Everyone has forgotten what it's like to have a guy that can take it to the house in one carry at the running back spot, like Saquon has shown. You get a guy like that can get to the second level and no one's catching him. That's a big, big weapon. And I think the Eagles have shown that. So, yeah, I think Ash is that type of guy, a guy that if he gets to the second level, and with his ability to, after the first contact and what he can do, man, that's dangerous. That's a dangerous weapon to have, especially if you think you've got your quarterback, which the Bears certainly think they do. You think you've got your receivers, which they think they do. They think they've converted or rebuilt their offensive line, right? Now your last piece to build around Caleb Williams, your franchise quarterback, is the running back.
Yeah, and the history of the Bears, the running back has been a big part of a lot of the success. So I think that now people are like, oh, well, if Caleb's this good, why do you have to put all of these million pieces around him to make him better? And I just say, well, you saw what happened last year with the rookie quarterback when he's getting sacked almost 70 times. The Bears couldn't run the ball. There were so many issues. Just imagine if you could take some of that pressure off of Caleb, how much we'll see him develop and be more comfortable in the pocket. We're having the same talks about Trevor Lawrence 5 years into his career because they haven't put people in front of him to protect him, and they haven't figured out how to run the ball. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be in year 5 heading into Caleb Williams being like, well, is he like not as good as we thought, or is he not as good as we thought because of the offensive line and because of the run game and because of the offensive coordinator? I don't want to have that conversation and keep having it forever. And so that's what I kind of say. And I know you've been the same way of offensive line. And then from there, it goes to the run game. That's the next step of kind of finding that middle ground of consistency in NFL offenses.
I guess I look at it philosophically. If you're going to spend the first overall pick on a quarterback, if you believe he is a franchise quarterback that can last 10, 12, 15 years in the league, and you know you're going to give him a second contract because you know he's got that talent, and the Jaguars gave that $275 million contract to Trevor Lawrence. Yeah. And if you think Caleb Williams is that guy, why wouldn't you do everything in your power to put every piece around him? Not just, okay, let's get him a good left tackle and let's get him a good wide receiver. Every piece possible you can do, because the quarterback is everything in football. So if you think you've got your guy, and I'm sure they do, put every single piece you possibly can around him to help him reach his ceiling. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think that something else, obviously, you're familiar with is the Ben Johnson. Obviously, Bears hire Ben Johnson. It's somebody that the Jags played the Lions this year, so you kind of saw how that offense worked. But also, a lot of Jags fans wanted Ben Johnson, so there was a lot of kind
Right.
of watching his offenses and how he worked things, and the importance of the run game in those. What he does with David Montgomery and Jameer Gibbs, and him having someone like Ashton Jeanty, I feel like would make Ben Johnson's job so easy.
Oh, I mean, it would make any play caller's job
Yeah,
easy.
that's true.
I mean, you got a guy that, again, that's a home run type guy,
Yeah,
but he's not only a guy that can get to the perimeter. He's a guy really more that's a between the he is a between the tackles runner.
yeah,
He's not a guy that you're
which we
going to have
need.
to get to the perimeter to get him to the second level. He can break tackles. He can bounce off guys. He's I hate to compare him to someone, but he's got that Emmitt Smith ability of bouncing off people, of not getting direct hits, but he's the speed. It's not even close. He's much faster than Emmitt Smith was. Much
Oh,
faster.
really? Oh, okay. Yeah, and that's why we hear all these different comps, and I think it's hard to comp Ashton Jeanty because he can do so many different things, and that was one of the Bears' biggest issues this last year. DeAndre Swift isn't a bad back. He's just not a between the tackles up the middle hard-nosed runner type of running back. So when you have him who's constantly going to the perimeter and trying to find space on the outside and not have a guy that, granted, some of that's the offensive line, we know that too, and so there wasn't really much he could do in the middle either. But Ashton Jeanty's that guy, and that you talk about those yards after contact. One of the stats that stood out to me were his forced missed tackles. And so I guess in the last decade, the only player to have more than 100 forced missed tackles had been Bijan Robinson, who had 104 in 12 games. Ashton Jeanty just had 105 in 10 games. Like, that is how incredible he comes when it comes to like forcing those missed tackles, getting those yards after contact, and just creating extra yardage. And that is huge for an offense when you have a running back who's able to create that.
Yeah, it also, I mean, it gives you so much balance too. There's so many different things you can do as a play caller if you have that ability to reach 2nd and 6 or 2nd and 5. Second and short or second and medium in the NFL is gold. Is
Yeah.
gold. Third and medium, that's where every game is won. 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6. And if you've got that ability to get to 2nd and 5 or 2nd and 6, you can do so many different things on that second down. And that's how you stress a defense. That's how you put a defense in conflict. That's why you need a guy like that, a run game where you have a little balance, where it's not always, okay, well, I know where they're going here on first down, or I know where they're going here on second and long. You got to get to the point where you can manage the game like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think he'll be there at 10, Matt. Just because I think a lot of the rumors are maybe the Raiders. The Raiders seem like they're linked to Jeanty. Do you think he's a player worth trading up for if the Bears are looking at him as that like final piece for the offense?
So I believe in the draft always, Taylor, is if you believe he's a top 10 guy,
Hmm.
he's worth trading up for.
Okay.
So if he's a top 10 guy, you believe he's on your board as a top 10 player overall, and you're 11 or 12 or you're 8 or 9, and you think someone's going to go up to 5 to get him or to 6 to get him, it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth it to go get him, especially if philosophically, like I said earlier, you believe, okay, we've got to do everything we can to make Caleb Williams the best player he can be. So yeah, I don't know why everybody's so afraid of trading up or losing draft picks or trading draft picks. The Rams, how many
Yeah.
first round picks did they give up?
Yeah. A
Right?
lot. They didn't. I
And
don't think they
they
had
won a
one for like
Super
3 years.
Bowl. Right, and they're constantly in the playoffs. How about the 49ers? Gave up 3 first round picks for a guy they threw away a year and a half later.
No.
They don't care
Yeah.
because they trust the way they draft. They trust the way they develop players, and they're fine with it. They're
Yeah.
fine with taking that gamble. So yeah, to me, if he's a guy that you truly want and you believe can be a difference maker and a guy that can help you, yeah, trade up, man. Yes.
Before I let you go, I do want to ask you just quick about some of those other ones because this running back class is good, and I think that also is what kind of puts some people hesitate a little bit because they're like, well, this running back class is so deep. Do you really need to trade up for a running back if you can get one of these other guys? And so the Omarion Hampton, who I'm doing a combo episode after I talk to you, we're going to chat a little bit about Omarion Hampton. He's that next for a lot of people, and then there's a lot of kind of back and forth of whether it's a Scadaboo, whether it's a Caleb Johnson, whether it's a Travion Henderson, some of those guys. And so, in your opinion, is that next Omarion Hampton to you behind Ashton Jeanty?
I mean, probably. I don't know if I would put Scattered that high.
Yeah, me either.
Travion Henderson's a guy who clearly has some speed. I think
Yeah,
that's attractive. Quinshon Junkins is a tough guy that can push a pile. Doesn't have that elite top end speed. But to me, it's Ash and it's Omarion Hampton. You
Yeah.
know, I think there's a clear defining line between those two players. Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't I wouldn't say, all right, well, if you don't get Jeanty, then you get Hampton. No way. No way.
Okay.
I think one will be a elite NFL player and one will be a guy that will be a good NFL player.
Yeah.
I truly believe that Ash has the ability to have that Saquon type impact.
Can you also do you think that Ashton will be able to be used in like the backfield receiving game too? Because that
Oh
is
yeah.
a big okay. All right.
Yeah.
I wasn't and I know
Absolutely.
you look at the numbers and it's there, but I wasn't sure if that was just because it was like the Boise offense and what do you do, or if that's something you think he can do at the next level.
Yeah, they actually. I talked with Spencer Danielson about this. They actually, they would put him out wide, and he said if they wanted to, they could play him a receiver. He started out a receiver in high school, so he's
Yeah.
definitely a guy that's got pass catching skills.
Yeah. Which is I feel like Ben Johnson's not going to take somebody who doesn't, because look at the two
Right.
backs that he's had. He needs those guys that can add to that side, that kind of part of the field too, or part of the game. But Matt, I really appreciate it. I know you're banging like crazy because you have a lot of stuff happening with Nico.
It's Saturday too.
I know. But thank you so much, and I will see you this next week.
All right, thanks, Taylor.
All right,
See
bye.
you.
All right, let's continue on this now running back episode, I guess we can call it, because there's a lot of chatter of a running back link to Chicago, and whether that happens in the first round or later rounds, I'm guessing it's going to happen at some point, but we want to address some of these top guys. And so today I'm joined by Lauren Brownlow. She covers the ACC for the ACC Panic Room. So all ACC stuff, but obviously familiar with North Carolina, which is why we want to have you on, Lauren. I appreciate it. Chatting a little Omarion Hampton with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I want to those two running backs, Ashton Jeanty, obviously number one, is the one that a lot of people are talking about, rightfully so. Omarion Hampton is that next guy that most people have linked as that number two running back. So it's going to be fascinating how kind of these shake out. Omarion Hampton, a lot of people at that number 10, which is where the Bears are picking. I also want to throw it out there. You cover the Panthers also. So you, DJ Moore fan, I know you were, Dimitri, who we know together, you were very upset when DJ Moore left Carolina. We love him over here in Chicago, but you are familiar with some of the things that have happened in Chicago now because of that trade and where they kind of sit right now in the world. I know. But I want to start with some of the stuff when we talk about those differences or maybe the links between Ashton Jeanty and Omarion Hampton. But before you get there, I think you do have to talk about some of his numbers and what that offense looked like at North Carolina. So in 2023 and 2024, he had over 3,000 yards, 30 touchdowns on the ground. So those are good numbers when you're talking about a running back for 2 seasons. He also had 5.9 yards per attempt, in addition to 595 receptions and 3 receiving touchdowns. So when you look at grades, he also is a pretty good pass blocking grade too. A lot of people even have him ranked higher than Ashton Jeanty in that area. But I want to start with that offense at North Carolina. Tell us a little bit about how they used Hampton and his role on that offense as a whole.
Well, it was certainly a departure for North Carolina last year because it was their first year without a prolific quarterback in quite some time, and it sure showed offensively. So essentially, Omarion Hampton was in a tough spot in that a lot of people understood that he was going to be the bulk of that. They were going to try to get him the football as much as they could and have him try to make things happen because their pass game there wasn't a whole lot there for much of the season. So Omarion was kind of behind a line that wasn't quite as good as some of the lines they've had before. It's okay, but it was not quite as good. And then obviously the defense is keying on him, knowing that if they don't have him going, they're not going to get much going on. Yeah. It's so UNC's had some good running backs over the last 5 or 6 years, like Javonte Williams is a guy that sticks out, Michael Carter. They had both of them in the backfield at the same time with a prolific quarterback. So not to, take anything away from what those guys did. They're both great as they've, continued to show, but at the same time, to have that balance certainly makes your life a lot easier as a running back than it was for Omarion last year. But I'm glad for him that people are still kind of recognizing that he's a fantastic player. And he still put up numbers in spite of all of that, in spite of everybody knowing that about North Carolina's offense. So yeah, he's an impressive back for sure.
which I do think is a testament to that, because to your point, if it's that predictable, if defenses know that you're going to run and you're still being able to produce at a high level, I think that is shows what kind of things that Hampton can do. One of the biggest issues in Chicago last year, Lauren, was the fact that, and some of this was the offensive line. The interior offensive line was not good, and that caused a lot of problems all over the offense. But I do also think that DeAndre Swift just is not that back. He's not the back that's going to get squeezed between tackles. He's not going to find those holes in the middle. He's more of that outside run guy. If he finds Green there, he's gone. But there was a lot of issues there to where it felt like whenever DeAndre Swift tried to go in the middle whatsoever, he was stuffed, and that was kind of hindering the offense a lot. And so what Hampton was able to do in North Carolina, those are some of his strengths. He is able to find those gaps from things that I've heard. So would you describe him as that type of back that can kind of do a little bit of both?
Yeah, certainly, at least at the collegiate level, he was able to do that, right? And obviously, look, like anybody else, when you're up against some of the stingier college football defense, maybe you're not going to do as well. But for the most part, I mean, he had over 100 yards in all but 2 games they played this year. So, and one was just a horrific blowout performance where they were passing most of the way at Boston College. And so for him to do that, even against some of the some defenses with some strength to them. I mean, he had 185 yards against NC State's defense. That's usually a pretty good one, even though it wasn't as good last year and stuff like that. 129 against Minnesota. Like, he can certainly get those tough yards for sure. And I think in theory, at least, he should be better at that specific skill set, but he can get outside as well and has some speed, of course. And some of his better plays this year came from that. But yeah, he can get some yards between the tackles when he needs to, and he doesn't go down easily either, which is always something you like to see in a back. Certainly something I like to see out of the Panthers back right now. Chuba Hubbard, it's my favorite thing about him. He'll get you a couple extra that it's like a bonus. You're like, oh, I didn't know you could
nice.
a few more. You were stopped right there. Good for you. So yeah, that's always something you like to see, I think, as a fan, for sure.
Yeah, and that's what there were moments of that with Swift. Once he got past the line of scrimmage, he would be a little more difficult to take down after that. But for some reason, the maybe just the vision, and we talk about that with running backs a lot, their vision and what they can see when it's kind of clustered up front. And Swift just isn't his specialty. And so it is going to be interesting of what Ben Johnson does, because that is part of it too. Ben Johnson had DeAndre Swift in Detroit and kind of limited his snaps and then traded him away. And then now he's back with DeAndre Swift. So how much does he want DeAndre Swift here? I don't know. We'll figure that out. And how much he uses him, when he uses him. But a big thing with Ben Johnson, and if you watch Detroit at all, obviously he loves also getting the backs involved in other elements of the game. When it comes into pass blocking, when it comes into being able to catch the ball in the backfield and use him as a receiver, is that we see some of these reception yards, obviously in 2 years, I think it was 595. So he can catch the ball, it seems. Would you see that could be a part of his game at the next level too?
Yeah, I think so. And it seems like, especially the last couple of years, they made more of an effort to get him involved in the offense in that way. Anytime, and that this is something Ben Johnson knows well, obviously, and North Carolina's offense has generally done this well as well over the last 5 or so years. If you can get a fast running back the ball in space, like you can get him, you can make plays, and that would happen from time to time too. It's just, I think maybe if the quarterback play had been a little stronger, we might have seen some better numbers there in terms of Omarion's catches and whatever, and going up. But I mean, it did go up every year. He was in school, and so I think that's certainly a good sign. And it looks like he had at least 3 in almost every game, especially after September. He had at least 3 catches in every game going forward, and he can make plays that way too. So yeah, I think that's something that he's capable of doing, and I will not be surprised to see him use that way. Maybe they use Swift more that way, since that is probably a little bit more of his strength, but at the same time, Omarion's more than capable of doing that.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's going to be interesting to see how Ben Johnson kind of adjust all of this with the backs. With Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, he did like using both of those backs in a bunch of different ways. It's funny because I almost started this podcast, the last Tar Heel that the Bears drafted was Mitchell Trubisky. And I know Bears fans kind of scoff at it a little bit, but the guy did get us an NFC North championship, and that was our last one in 2018. So I have a little bit of love still for him.
I'll be honest. Even as someone who covered him on a regular basis, I didn't understand it at the time. I thought he was going to be an NFL quarterback and a starter, and I thought he'd be good. But when he got drafted that high, I was like, "Huh,
Are you sure?"
yeah." I didn't really fully understand it, but you know how it is in the NFL.
And
yeah,
the Bears
you got the physical skills too. Well, it's the Bears. Hey, yeah, sorry. I mean, not like the Panthers have a ton better of a track record except for Cam Newton. So, not saying anything there. But I mean, it's one of those things where if you have like the physical skills that those scouts fall in love with, you'll be loved no matter what. And for me, I thought Mitchell didn't always like. By the way, Mitchell was an NFL thing, as I'm sure you know. He was always Mitch to us. He never corrected any of us. Yeah. So weird. I'm like, what? You're grown up now, so now you're Mitchell. What's
you're
this
Mitchell,
right? But he didn't. There were some key moments I felt like that he didn't always come through and make the plays that the team needed, and so that for me that would have been a red flag for me personally. Had I been, I mean, I know that can be overblown as well, but at the same time, like. That for me was one thing that I was kind of like, I don't know that I see like number, that high. I just didn't really didn't get it.
And we also, the thing that always stuck out to me, I was like, he started 12 games in college, and we're trading up to draft this quarterback.
And he right. Oh, sorry. He was always the more talented one too of him and Marquise Williams, but Marquise was the leader guy and the guy that the team really rallied around and gathered around. And so to me, that was also
another side.
Yeah.
I want to talk, because another thing about this too is when I talk about the way that the running backs may look at in Chicago. A lot of people say that his best path probably starting in the NFL is to be that early down guy, which I do think makes sense. I also think it makes sense in the Bears offense in general, because you have Roschon, who kind of has just been molded into this goal line guy now. That's pretty much what it is. Maybe when you're in 3rd and 1 situations, 3rd and short situations. So that in between of what they'll do with DeAndre Swift, and if they draft, let's say they draft a Ashton Jeanty or an Omarion Hampton, what that balance of it. But do you think that makes sense the most, just kind of having him be that, first, second down type of guy, at least to start his career?
Yeah, for sure. And, for as good as he was, he probably didn't score as many touchdowns as you would have thought either. And that was somewhat of a function of North Carolina not always being in the red zone as often as they were used to. And I remember more than one of his touchdowns came from outside the red zone anyway. Okay. So, he probably knew that's a good thing, but he probably knew if I'm getting in there, that's the only way.
Yeah. I'm going to have to find it from back here.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense in terms of making him that early down guy. I will say North Carolina, I thought got a bit predictable in that way because it was like first down, you were like, okay, they're going to run Omarion. And I think the defenses knew that too. And in the NFL, you can only get away with predictable for so long. So, hopefully they're able to either shore up their O-line enough to help out with that and, or, tweak some things to where it's not just so obvious.
Exactly what they're going to do. They were running the ball. Let's not do that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the Ben Johnson said in this offseason, or he was quoted saying that when his offenses, he likes to show 14 different things, but prepare for 4. So that's one of the genius side of Ben Johnson and what he likes to do. I do want to, there's 4 names when you talked about earlier in this about his kind of like those missed tackles he can force and the yards after contact and things like that. There's 4 guys that sit atop of this running back class, which is actually really good. There's a lot of running backs in this class that I really like. And even still in the 3rd round, 4th round, some of them that you may be able to get them. 4 names though, that sit at that yards after contact. And Ashton Jeanty obviously is number 1. We know that he's that guy. Travion Henderson's number 2, Omarion Hampton's number 3. And the 4th is a guy you also may be familiar with in the ACC, and Damian Martinez, that out of Miami. But the importance of that, Lauren, and I think it seems like an obvious thing, but the importance of having the maybe both type of backs like Detroit has, one that is maybe a little more finesse runner and the one that can like kind of bulldoze guys. And we're seeing that transfer more even into the NFL now too.
I agree with that. And I think, if nothing else, at a bare minimum, I think you need 2 capable backs, just even skill sets aside. But certainly you would love for the skill sets to be complementary in that way. The Panthers had it forever ago with like Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams. But even then, their skill sets weren't necessarily contrasting in that specific way. But I mean, it goes back a ways. It's nice to see it coming back in style a bit in the NFL. the running back duos were always a favorite of mine personally
Yeah.
growing up. And so it's nice to see that coming back into vogue, and especially in kind of the new way they're being used. Like you mentioned, like Ben Johnson's like, formation candy, stuff like the eye candy he likes to give you and stuff like that to try to trick people. Cause you have to nowadays. You can't just, line up straight up and just run it up the gut every time and expect to have results. Like you've got to have some deception involved somewhere. I mean, I certainly think that that's something that he could be an effective part of a duo 100% in that way. But his skill set, I think, is a pretty diverse one. But still, if you can get an every down back out of him, or at least an early down back, as you said, out of him, I think that's fine. And I think that's probably, if they draft him in that spot, I'm sure that's what they'll want out of him, I would imagine.
And I'm all for it. I'm with you on I love the running back world. I guess part of that is being a Bears fan. We grew up with some of the best running backs like throughout my time. So I feel like part of it is I love that we're getting kind of this resurgence of the running back into the NFL and the appreciation for some of them. This last year with Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley, I think upped that a little bit. And I do think teams are now realizing that, yes, it's a passing league, but if you can't run the ball, it's still going to hinder your offense. Before I let you go, Lauren, I want to get to, are there any of the other guys that are coming out of North Carolina? There's obviously Rucker, the edge out of Tar Heel, the Willie Lampkin, the guard, Elijah Huzzie is a name I think we actually heard quite a bit the last couple season, and then Bryson Nesbitt. Any of those guys that you like at the next level at all?
I really like Huzzie a lot. Huzzie's a guy, I mean, not early, obviously, but Huzzie is a guy that he has a strong special teams background as well. He was one of their better special teams players for North Carolina. And I think that's so important in the NFL, and that can absolutely get you a roster spot for a long time if you can be a valuable special teams guy. It's a hard skill set, I think, to kind of get in the NFL. In terms of like, oh, I'm on the roster as a specialist, but you can be on the roster as a specialist for a long time if you're good at it. And Huzzie was good at it. It's not like he's not good at other things too, but I just think like in that way, he'd have the best chance. Rucker obviously is really good as well. But I mean, to me, there's a huge gap obviously, and Lampkin's pretty good too. But I think like for me, it's Omarion and a big drop off. And I think some of that speaks to, sort of the fact that that's what he was working with at North Carolina as well. Like he was kind of like him and a bunch of, not draft guys necessarily, like not top of the draft guys. Whereas like when we talked about like Javonte Williams and Michael Carter, that they had like NFL receivers on that roster, NFL quarterback, et cetera, et cetera. And, it was kind of Omarion and the gang back there, I mean, there was just, he was doing the best he could with sort of not the best.
Limited resources.
And I think that speaks even more highly to what he can do. Yeah, for sure. But Huzzie's a guy that I think will land somewhere. And it just like a personal favorite of mine to watch. Whenever I had much positive to say about North Carolina last year, usually his name was not far behind. Just making those plays that don't, like making a special. Yeah.
He's one that I mentioned him just because, when you go to like, for example, PFF draft board, he's around like what they're ranked 165. Mm-hmm. And so it is later, but the Bears also don't need a corner. So I feel like if they address corner, it will be later. So some of those names are kind of ones you can keep an eye on. But it is, I just remember several times last year, especially watching him being like, oh, there's something there but like how much is there and how quickly will that translate to the next level. I have to ask you before you let you go, because we're in like the Bill Belichick world of UNC now, which seems wild. But I feel like I have to at least ask like that vibe right now with Belichick in college football.
It is surreal to say the least, because like everyone I know is like, are you following his girlfriend on Instagram? And I'm like, no. And nothing against her. Like clearly she's a savvy person. Like she gets it. Yeah. So I'm not criticizing, but then it's like then the girlfriend story comes out about asking her to be CC'd on the emails. And I'm just like, oh my God. But it's just weird to have him here, right? Like, I mean, in general, I mean, around here, it's no secret, I'm sure, that basketball is king and football look, North Carolina football and really all triangle area football, if we're being real, is kind of like just how can they find the banana peel and slip on it, because that's just what we're used to around here. Have a great start to the season. There's no question something's going to happen down the stretch to screw it up for somebody. Like, no one around here can have nice things, and they will certainly find a way to make things more difficult on themselves year after year. So, and North Carolina football has tried this a time or two, like trying to go out and get a coach and with some pedigree, at least from an X&O perspective, and see if they can fix it and overcome the bad luck morass that is North Carolina football. But so far, no one's been able to do it in however 100 plus years or however long it's been a football. So, we shall see. I don't know. I don't know what to think about it. There's a lot of hype around it right now. I've heard good things, I guess, about recruiting, but like, I can't imagine like looking at Bill Belichick if I'm a 17-year-old and I'm like, I want to go play for that guy. It's like, I don't know. I don't know.
I honestly keep forgetting. And every time I go to talk about North Carolina football, I'm like, oh yeah, Bill Belichick is the coach in North Carolina. And this is crazy. But like, to your point, a lot of my hesitation comes from like how well he's going to be able to relate to that age of kid, because I already think we saw that catching up a little bit in the NFL, where these younger guys coming in they don't play that hard ball coach anymore. And I know sometimes people call them sissies about it, but it's just kind of the world we live in. The Tom Coughlin's don't work anymore. That's why his second stint back here in Jacksonville didn't work. It just, it doesn't connect the way, they don't listen the way that they used to in that sense. But it's going to be very interesting to follow along with. And I'm sure like the recruiting aspect, because people hear Super Bowl winning head coach Bill Belichick, but once you're in that locker room, how does it look like? So that'll be very interesting to follow along with this season. But Lauren, I really appreciate you hopping on with me. I know it's been a long time coming, us chatting about something, so I really appreciate it.
Definitely. I'm glad to finally meet you, and happy to come on anytime.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.